Today we are reading Book 4, Chapter 13, Mad-Eye Moody, from Harry Potter. For today, I'm interested in seeing how Mad-Eye is introduced and what we learn about him, also seeing how the characters and the system of Hogwarts, how they react to Moody. Today's not bad. Outside all morning, said Ron, running his finger down his timetable. Herbology with the Hufflepuffs and care of magical creatures. Damn it, we're still with the Slytherins. Double divination this afternoon, Harry groaned, looking down. Divination was his least favorite subject, apart from potions. Professor Trelawney kept predicting Harry's death, which he found extremely annoying. One would, wouldn't they? Harry has reminded us that Trelawney keeps predicting that he'll die. Imagine if a teacher was doing that at school nowadays with a real child. That is horrible. Absolutely horrible. And he's playing it off like, it just gets annoying. Trying to ignore this sinking feeling of disappointment in his stomach. All right, actual physical feelings here. Harry returned to his porch. Was it possible that something had happened to Hedwig and that Sirius hadn't even gotten his letter? His preoccupation lasted all the way across the sodden vegetable path until they arrived in Greenhouse 3. But here he was distracted by Professor Sprout, showing the class the ugliest plants Harry had ever seen. Bubotubers, Professor Sprout told them briskly. They need squeezing. You will collect the pus. Disgusting. The what? Said Seamus Finnegan, sounding revolted. Pus, Finnegan, pus, said Professor Sprout, and it's extremely valuable, so don't waste it. You will collect the pus, I say. Wear your dragon hide gloves. It can do funny things to the skin when undiluted. Squeezing the bubotubers was disgusting, but oddly satisfying. Good morning. Yes. This here is Gollum. He says, Hagrid pointed down into the crates. Urf! Squealed Lavender Brown, jumping backwards. Urf! Just about summed up the blast-ended Scroots, in Harry's opinion. They looked like deformed, shell-less lobsters, horribly pale and slimy-looking, with legs sticking out in very odd places and no visible heads. Anyone else notice a theme of grossness coming up so far? They were giving off a very powerful smell of rotting fish. Oh. Count me out. I'm out of this one. Only just hatched, said Hagrid proudly. So you'll be able to raise them yourselves. Why would we want to raise them? Said a cold voice. The Slytherins had arrived. The speaker was Draco Malfoy. Hagrid looked stumped at the question. I mean, what do they do? What is the point of them? Hagrid opened his mouth, apparently thinking hard. There was a few seconds' pause, then he said roughly, That's next lesson, Malfoy. You're just feeding them today. Now you'll want to try them on a few different things. I've never had them before. Not sure what they'll go for. Just try them out with a bit of each. First pus, and now this, muttered Seamus. Yeah, Seamus, I'm with you. Nothing but deep affection for Hagrid could have made Harry, Ron, and Hermione pick up squelchy handfuls of frog liver and lower them into the crates. Harry couldn't suppress the suspicion that the whole thing was entirely pointless, because the Scroots didn't seem to have mouths. Ouch! Yelled Dean Thomas. After about 10 minutes, it got me. Hagrid hurried over to him, looking anxious. Its end exploded, said Dean angrily, showing Hagrid a burn on his hand. Erg, said Lavender Brown again. Erg, Hagrid. What's that pointy thing on it? Ah, some of them have got stings, said Hagrid enthusiastically. I reckon they're the males. The females got a sort of sucker things on their bellies. I think they might be to suck blood. Well, I can certainly see why we're trying to keep them alive, said Malfoy sarcastically. Who wouldn't want pets that can burn, sting, and bite all at once? I hate to have to keep saying this, but occasionally Malfoy is very correct. He is not a good person, but sometimes he's right. Just because they're not very pretty, it doesn't mean they're not Useful, Hermione snapped. Dragon's blood's amazingly magical, but you wouldn't want a dragon for a pet, would you? Harry and Ron grinned at Hagrid, who gave them a furtive smile from behind his bushy beard. Hagrid would have liked nothing better than a pet dragon, as Harry, Ron, and Hermione knew only too well. Hagrid simply loved monstrous creatures. The more lethal, the better. It is exactly like people that like squeezing things out of other people. It is exactly like that. It is gross, and some people, I guess, do find that satisfying. No, I think he's become acculturated to that. It's also not the first time he's been subject to prophecy, so for his age, he's got an unusual amount of prophecy circling around him. And yes, again, everything in the magical world seems to be gross in some sort of fashion. That got my attention while we were reading that segment. He's just continuing the pattern. He doesn't even research the dangers of these creatures. They could be toxic. They could be poisonous. They could, I don't know, steal students' souls or bewitch them or something. He doesn't even know what they eat. This is horribly irresponsible. I know the dude feels an attunement and affinity for the monstrous creatures, but you at least have a responsibility to know what the heck you're talking about. Yes, thank you. I would agree. Malfoy is correct. Not that the creatures are useless and not that they don't deserve care, but I certainly would not want one for a pet. I wonder if the two gross classes theme is going to lead us anywhere, because thus far we haven't seen anything about Mad-Eye. They are now, said Hermione in an exasperated voice. You know perfectly well I only said that to shut Malfoy up, said Hermione. As a matter of fact, I think he's right. The best thing to do would be to stamp on the lot of them before they start attacking us all. So he couldn't help thinking about what she had just said to him. I fear the thing you dread will indeed come to pass. But Hermione was right. Harry thought irritably. Professor Trelawney really was an old fraud. He wasn't dreading anything at the moment at all. Well, unless you counted his fears that Sirius had been caught. Harry, Ron muttered. What? Harry looked around. The whole class was staring at him. He sat up straight. He had been almost dozing off, lost in the heat and his thoughts. You were clearly born under the baleful influence of Saturn, said Professor Trelawney, a note of resentment in her voice at the fact that he had obviously not been hanging on her words. What? Sorry, said Harry. Saturn, dear, the planet Saturn, said Professor Trelawney, sounding definitely irritated that he wasn't riveted by this news. Your dark hair, your mean stature, the tragic losses so young in life. I think I am right in saying, my dear, that you were born in midwinter? No, said Harry. I was born in July. I was wondering the same thing. If you're trying to be manipulating and spinning stories and you're trying to paint a scene, lowering people's inhibitions, wondered the same thing. Kind of like a ceremonial space, like a sweat lodge or something where you put something on the fire, helps everybody relax. There's definitely something interesting in that thought. Oh, that is interesting. So you're saying that's foreshadowing. Lovely. I'm not picking up anything super huge in this chapter so far. Hagrid's not super responsible in teaching creatures, and Trelawney is still Trelawney. Nice pickup on the Voldemort birthday, though. Also, in that scene, it could be that Trelawney, she's tired of Harry not freaking out. Calling him out like that in class is a little bit revenge, so she's trying to get his goat. She knows that what she's been doing hasn't been working, and she would like a reaction. So I think part of that is about getting Harry to react. Your dad's in the paper, Weasley, said Malfoy, brandishing a copy of the Daily Prophet and speaking very loudly so that everyone in the packed entrance hall could hear. Listen to this. Further mistakes at the Ministry of Magic, writes Rita Skeeter. The ministry was plunged into fresh embarrassment yesterday by the antics of Arnold Weasley of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts office. Arnold. When the press spells your name wrong, that is a deliberate dig. Malfoy looked up. Imagine them not even getting his name right, Weasley. It's almost as though he's a complete non-entity, isn't it? He cowed. Everyone in the entrance hall was listening now. Malfoy straightened the paper with a flourish and read on. Arnold Weasley, who was charged with possession of a flying car 2 years ago, was yesterday involved with a tussle with several Muggle law keepers, policemen, over a number of highly aggressive dustbins. Mr. Weasley appears to have rushed to the aid of Mad-Eye Moody. Mr. Weasley refused to answer Daily Prophet questions about why he had involved the ministry in such an undignified and embarrassing scene. And there's a picture, Weasley, said Malfoy, flipping the paper over and holding it up. A picture of your parents outside their house, if you can call it a house. Your mother could do with losing a bit of weight, couldn't she? Ron was shaking with fury. Everyone was staring at him. Get stuffed, Malfoy, said Harry. Come on, Ron. Oh, yeah. You were staying with them this summer, weren't you, Potter? Sneered Malfoy. So tell me, is his mother really that porky, or is it just the picture? You know your mother, Malfoy? Said Harry. Both he and Hermione had grabbed the back of Ron's robes to stop him launching himself at Malfoy. Malfoy's pale face went slightly pink. Don't you dare insult my mother, Potter. Keep your fat mouth shut, then, said Harry, turning away. Bang. Several people screamed. Harry felt something white-hot graze the side of his face. He heard a second loud bang and a roar. Oh, no, you don't, laddie. Harry spun around. Professor Moody was limping down the marble staircase. His wand was out, and it was pointing right at a pure white ferret, which was shivering on the stone-flagged floor, exactly where Malfoy had been standing. There was a terrified silence in the entrance hall. Nobody but Moody was moving a muscle. Moody turned to look at Harry. At least, his normal eye was looking at Harry. The other one was pointing into the back of his head. Leave it, Moody shouted. Leave what? Harry said, bewildered. Moody's not talking to him. Moody is very aware of the scene right now. Moody's still scene management. He knows what's happening. Not you. Him, Moody growled, jerking his thumb over his shoulder at Crabbe, who had just frozen, about to pick up the white ferret. It seemed that Moody's rolling eye was magical and could see out of the back of his head. Moody started to limp towards Crabbe, Goyle, and the ferret, which gave a terrified squeak and took off, streaking towards the dungeons. I don't think so, roared Moody, pointing his wand at the ferret again, and it flew 10 feet into the air, fell with a smack to the floor, and then bounced upwards once more. I don't like people who attack when their opponent's back's turned, growled Moody, as the ferret bounced higher and higher, squealing in pain. Stinking, cowardly, scummy thing to do. The ferret flew through its airs, its legs and tail flailing helplessly. Never do that again, said Moody, speaking each word as the ferret hit the stone floor and bounced upwards again. Professor Moody, said a shocked voice. Is that a student? Shrieked Professor McGonagall. Draco Malfoy had reappeared, lying in a heap on the floor with his sleek blonde hair all over his now brilliantly pink face. He got to his feet, wincing. Moody, we never use transfiguration as a punishment, said Professor McGonagall weakly. We'll talk about McGonagall's weakness here in a minute. Malfoy, whose pale eyes were still watering with pain and humiliation, looked malevolently up at Moody and muttered something in which the words, my father, were distinguishable. And that links with the McGonagall thing. Oh, yeah? Said Moody quietly. Limping forward a few steps, the dull clunk of his wooden leg echoing around the hall. wouldn't like. Remember that. Well, I know your father of old, boy. You tell him. Moody's keeping a close eye on his son. Your head of house will be Snape, will it? Yes, said Malfoy resentfully. Another old friend, growled Moody. I've been looking forward to a chat with old Snape. Come on, you. He seized Malfoy's upper arm and marched him off towards the dungeons. Yeah, and that's a perfect natural segue. Thank you for that, Katie. Yeah, let's talk about what we just saw here in this scene with Moody and Draco and Harry and the crew. Now, Draco's just being Draco and doing Draco things. Normally, he hasn't popped off and tried to attack people from behind. But in this case, that was very useful behavior because that gave Moody an incident to respond to. So just like the cowboy entrance analogy from the last chapter, we're doing regular Hogwarts stuff and then boom, Moody's on the scene. Now, if we think about the incident from previous years where we had a hippogriff and Hagrid got in a lot of trouble for some incidental contact with an animal in a class, imagine how much trouble Moody has just created for the school by physically slamming a student into the walls over and over again for an infraction that the kid had not even committed yet. He has just made Hogwarts and Dumbledore by extension exceptionally vulnerable. And we're not going to pathologize anybody here, but what we've learned about Moody so far, how he's painted out in the press, what his reputation is, he sounds like somebody who's lived entirely for far too long on the edge. Sounds like he's got a lot of hypervigilance. And when it comes to threat scenarios, he probably gets to very rapid assessments very quickly, which is helpful when you live on the edge for a long time. But unfortunately, he's probably too prone to trust his assessments. He probably collapses that ambiguity far too fast and decides on a course of action. Those instincts come from somewhere. If you've ever sat through an ambush or a surprise attack, you don't have time to dither. Time is money, is life, and you must move. So those instincts are valid, but now they're overtuned, and he instantly collapses a situation into an action to resolve it without any time to investigate or verify his hypotheses. He knows what he knows, and he's ready to act. Now, obviously, I don't know the canon yet about his eye and the powers that he's bringing to the fight, but so far, this would be something similar to PTSD or a war veteran who still very much has those patterns alive in them. And that's why I was talking about the McGonagall thing, because not only does McGonagall have concern for the students, even Draco Malfoy, but she's concerned about what this is going to do to Hogwarts and Dumbledore. Pay attention to the wooden peg leg. Imagine you're on the ground. You've just been humiliated, and the person who just humiliated you is speaking sternly to you, and they come towards you, and you don't hear footsteps. You just hear a remorseless clunk, step, clunk, step, clunk. So envisioning Moody pacing towards Malfoy while he's yelling at him with a peg leg, I mean, that's a scene. Draco Malfoy, the amazing bouncing ferret. Harry and Hermione both laughed. He could have really hurt Malfoy, she said. It was good, really, that Professor McGonagall stopped it. Hermione, said Ron furiously, his eyes snapping open again. You're ruining the best moment of my life. Let's cover that little scene snippet real fast. We know Hermione has plenty of reasons to dislike Malfoy. But in this little scene, Hermione still manages to express that morally what was happening was wrong. So Hermione says, I don't like this kid, but that was wrong. If we leverage that with her standing up to Trelawney and her growing positionality on the elves, it seems like Hermione is becoming the moral compass of the group. Chapter closeout. Yeah, absolutely. In that scene, we saw Malfoy go from being an oppressor to being oppressed without any real due process or appeal or evidentiary procedure. One person got mad because they didn't like what he was doing and had the power to do something about it, and they did. So, yeah, I feel bad for Malfoy in the second half of that particular scene as well. Is he allowed to behave that way? Also, no. Did need to be addressed, but maybe not like that. If we look back through the chapter, what we had was two gross classes, divination. So we get reminded that Trelawney is out there and she's trying to provoke reactions with Harry. And then we had some gross herbology stuff. I know that actually came first, but lots of themes of grossness. And that set us up for that conflict with Draco. And we found Mad Eye, and Mad Eye is definitely got a bit of a hair trigger. He's now jeopardized the position of Dumbledore and the school, which is probably not helpful with this incoming Triwizard tournament. And I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.